Hello, friends, and welcome to the Truetone Lounge. Today, we are sitting down with pickup winder extraordinaire Jason Lawler. Jason Lawler literally wrote the book on how to wind pickups, from taking your mom's sewing machine and turning it into a winder, and of course, started as a guitar builder. And I'm assuming that in your story, we're going to learn that you weren't satisfied with the offerings and you started winding your own pickups due to that. And the process has been, one of the most, acclaimed, pickup winders and pickup winding businesses around today. And so Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of wind you up and get you started. So first off, tell me how you started playing the guitar, and then how, and then get us through to like pickup winding and such. And of course, we'll interject along the way, but yeah.
Okay, so when I was about 7 years old, I had a K flat top that my dad won in a carnival. Really funky one with painted on binding, and just a really piece of crap with no truss rod or anything like that, nylon strings, but it looked like a Gibson or flat top. And got the Mel Bay book out and learned Tom Dooley and all those folk songs and stuff. And when I was 11, I heard Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced? It was the first album I ever bought, and I went, "Wow, I gotta play electric guitar, right?"
Yeah.
And, so at the time it was a Japanese brand they imported into the Northwest. It was called Lyle guitars, and I bought a copy of a SG, a really bad copy of an SG. The neck was all laminated out of real thin strips of wood, and it had really crappy pickups on it. It came with a little amp about like what's behind me there, that red thing there. It was about that size, and it said National on it. And I got both pieces for like $100. And the thing just played horribly. I think it even had brass frets on it, And so that's what got me. And I kept getting better guitars. And then when I got into high school, I decided I wanted to try to build an electric guitar. And my shop teacher let me do it. And it actually came out, and it was playable. The only pickups you could buy at the time were these Guild humbuckers. You could buy those. They sold those. You could get them mail order. Later on, like DiMarzio and showed up, and Seymour Duncan and Schecter. But that was more like late 70s before you could really just call them up and order stuff. So I went to a school called Roberto-Venn in 1979, and they taught you how to the rudimentary pickup making stuff, kind of like what Semi Mosley did, because that's where they learned it from, was Semi Mosley. So they were making the bobbins out of plastics, and they'd have like a wood core, and you glue it all together and wind it with a little train transformer on a motor, and you just got the wire back and forth like that, and you would just fill the bobbin, and that was your pickup. They had surplus magnets, and we'd make a little wood box for a cover, and we'd drop the thing in there and pour Bondo over the top of it, and that was your pickup. It's like so. Really, the thing that I learned from them was you don't rotate the roll of wire to unreel it, because that's a 10-pound spool or a 5-pound spool, and you're just going to snap the wire because it's as fine as your hair. Right. You actually feed it. You put the spool on the floor, and the wire unravels around the end of the spool.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get that. You'll see a lot of people making D-reelers for their pickup winder, and it's impossible to do it that way.
You just set it on the floor and you let it come off on its own.
Yeah, it just de-spools on its own.
Yeah.
It doesn't twist or anything like that. There's a couple other tricks to it too, but anyway, so after I got out of Roberto-Venn, found that I had to kind of figure it all out. They showed you how to do it once, but then you have to get your jigs together and their angles. You have to know the angles and figure all that stuff out for the neck set. And we were down in my mom's basement, me and my buddy, and we had a box full of, it was like a European Lego kit. It had motors in it, it had gears, and it had worm drive stuff and chains, and switches. And we went, let's design an automatic pickup winder. We started getting into the box, and we used a worm drive motor, and it would go across. The bob would spin like this, and the worm drive would go this way, and we had a switch on top of it, and there was a little adjustable stop on the side, and the switch would hit the stop, and then it would go back that way, and there'd be another adjustable stop there, dink, and it would just go back and forth, and it worked perfect for any kind of pickup, any size bobbin or anything, and except it was really slow, really slow. So it would take you 45 minutes to wind a pickup with it.
And how long does it take to normally, wind a pickup?
In a coil, 5 to 10 minutes, depending on what it is.
Okay, and that's someone that's got, obviously it's the bobbin spinning, and then they're feeding it by hand or a machine doing it.
We have a couple different ways we do it. I was teaching at Roberto-Venn for about 10 years or 12 years, twice a year, teaching people how to wind pickups. There'd be like 20 or 30 at a time, and we'd had the weekend to get them to make a strap pickup and a humbucker, and I showed them all how to do it like that. And it takes some getting used to, but once you get used to it, you can just kind of intend on where the wire's going, and it does it. You don't even really have to think about it. You just have to go, I want it to be like this, and it does it. There are other systems. There's the one we use is a rotating cam that goes around, and it's sloppy. It doesn't do good turns per layer like a more complicated machine would do. They can program in turns per layer, so it once it hits 60 turns, it goes back 60 turns, and it goes back 60 turns. But even at that, because we're winding oblong coils instead of round solenoids, it changes the way the wire lays on there. And the farther away you are with the transverser from the bobbin, the more random it'll just start oscillating on its own. You have to be right up on it to get it to really follow. Otherwise, it's like, I don't know if you've ever run a sewing machine, but the thing on top that winds the little bobbin that goes underneath, there's no traverser on it. It just loads it up on its own.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like scatter winding. It's not laying down perfectly. So the farther away you get your traverser, the more randomness you get into it. But we also want to have consistent randomness, right?
Right. So that way you have consistency when somebody buys, multiples of the same pickup. Yeah.
Yeah. You want it to sound, they want it to sound like what they had before or what their friend had. So,
yeah.
So it's important to build in some sort of randomness, but keep it from running away with you. Yeah.
So what does scatter winding do to the sound, to the, I know that's kind of a big open-ended question, but yeah, let's talk a bit about scatter winding.
It's overused because any machine can be set up to scatter wind. It just means that the windings are not parallel to each other.
Right.
They cross over each other to some extent, and it breaks up the capacitance of the coil, so you get a little bit more extended frequency response if you're not bleeding off treble through capacitance.
Okay.
So that's basically what it is. But that's really misunderstood. There's a lot of things that people have no idea. They talk, they read stuff on forums and stuff, and a lot of it's not particularly accurate, or there's always an exception to what people believe is going on. Like, the ohms, the ohm reading, the ohm level. Have people say, "Oh, every coil that I've had, the Strat coil, it was 6.3. That's what I want." And I go, well, if you put that 6.3 pickup in your pocket for about 2 minutes, it's going to come out reading 6.5 because it got warm.
Right.
Just even blow on it a couple times real close, and
Yeah.
it'll go up, or put it in the refrigerator, it'll go down. So we wind our coils, we'll solder them up and measure them, and then the next morning we go back in and measure them again. And just from the tension on the wire, it builds up heat after 10,000 turns. So
Yeah.
they always read higher right after they've been wound. And your guitar doesn't sound different when you play outdoors under 80-degree weather than it does when you're indoors when it's 60 degrees.
Yeah. Showing how, yeah, the ohms does not indicate how it's going to sound.
Yeah, it means nothing really.
Yeah.
I'd say futile. Resistance is futile.
Perfect.
Yeah. Because you can use big wire, which has less resistance per foot. But what really makes a difference is how many turns you have in the coil. That's what's generating voltage. More turns, you're generating more voltage.
Yeah.
So you can have a bigger wire with more turns on it, but it reads way lower than something with like a 44 gauge. You could use a 38 gauge, which they used in the 1930s on pickup coils. I'm not sure why, but that's what they did.
Yeah.
So,
So let's get back to kind of the timeline. So you went to Roberto-Venn, you learned about, making pickups, you start teaching how to make pickups. How
later. I didn't teach till way later.
Okay. Okay. So when do you start making pickups for your own guitars, and when does that turn into making pickups for other people?
Yeah, it was. I started making pickups for the guitars I was building after I got out of Roberto-Venn because I knew how to do it, and there was really the only thing you get, like I said, was those Guild humbuckers, or there were a lot of mini humbuckers floating around. If you went to a repair store, you could
Right.
get mini humbuckers because everybody was pulling them out of their guitars
Right.
and
Because they were putting in full-size humbuckers, and
routing it.
yep.
Yeah, so there were those available too, and I didn't really like either one very much. So, but basically, what I was making, I tried making some humbuckers in the way that I was taught at Roberto-Venn, but they came out huge because the coils were just too sloppy, and so mostly what I made was they were basically like Mosrite pickups, which are pretty much a P90 kind of
Yeah.
pickup. They're overwound P90. So I was making those for the guitars I was building. And a few years later, I started gigging. So I was still building guitars, but I was also like working at a gas station and gigging and trying to get the business thing together. And I did that for, 10, 15 years. And I was scrounging magnets from like liquidators, and I was using cassette boxes for cassette tapes, the boxes for the plastic. I'd, cut the thing
Yeah.
up and glue it together. Anything that I could figure out how to use, because I didn't know where to get magnets. I remember calling one company that made guitar pickups, and I said, where do you get magnets at? And they go, oh, I can't remember what they said. They said something really smart ass to me.
Well, because that was going to be one of the questions I was going to ask, is that, pre-internet, and pre, the boutique business and such, it's like, how did you get parts? How did you get magnets? And you're making your own bobbins. I mean, this is part of the, the passion for it, that it's like you're fabricating your own stuff.
Yeah, and always have. And a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But Yeah, liquidators. I'd find like little magnets that they used in like doorbell chimes, you know, little segmented ones. And I would glue them all, glue like 6 of them on a side, and 6 on the other side of the P90 kind of thing, breaking them in half to get 2 pieces and stuff like that. Um, and there was something, if you went to the library, there's something called a Thomas Register. You ever heard of that?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
all the different companies that make everything, and any wholesale places, all these wholesale places, and that's how you had to learn how to find stuff, was through that. So I found a place called Electrosola that was selling the magnet wire. Before I was getting it at liquidators, and it was pretty rare to run into it. And when you did run into it, it looked like a big fur ball because the wire had been broken so many times on it, you know. And there are tricks to finding the end of the wire. It takes about an hour to get to the end of the wire. You take a razor blade and you cut down all the wire about an 1/8 inch thick, and you just start peeling it off. And eventually you'll get down to where like 3 pieces are coming off, and one of those is the end, and the other 2 are like a loop that's being looped around it. And you just got to keep going and going and going. So I hang it way up in the ceiling so that the weight of the wire will help waterfall it off. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to do that kind of stuff when I first got wire until I found electric solo. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're fabricating your own bobbins, you're getting, but of course then you're having to get wire and magnets from somebody, and you're finding these things. And
Yeah.
so what are your first offerings as far as pickups?
Oh, they were okay. The first offerings. Well, the first thing I made was P90s.
Okay.
This is a little bit later on when after the internet was just a baby thing, you know. I found out what the material was called that Fender uses on their pickup, and it's called Forbon. It's vulcanized fiberboard. And once I found that, man, you can cut it on a table saw into strips, and then I would cross cut it to get little squares, and then I made these plexiglass templates
Yeah.
that I would stick with double tape on it, and then I'd run it on the router so it would shape it, you know,
Yeah.
and put it on the drill press and drill all the holes in it and stuff. And you can scrape the edge with a razor blade, and it rounds it over, you know. That was like a amazing thing it really shot me forward like a long ways. And so I started making P90s, and then people wanted strats, they wanted tellies, so it was P90 strats and tellies, all these single coils. I also made a lot of custom stuff I did a job for Paul Allen. This company called Vulcan called me up. You know Paul Allen, the Microsoft.
Name. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And they wanted a set of a bunch of humbucking pickups for something called an octopus clock. I had no idea what it was, but I think it had something to do with cables that they would ring. And anyways, it turned out to be his yacht, the octopus. So I make custom stuff like that, and a lot of steel guitar stuff, and I also made a lot of bar blade pickups about 16 inches long, and you'd take them and load them up into a piano and wire them all together, and you'd have run it into a Marshall, and sound like John Lord on piano or something.
Who did you make that for?
I made those a few times, but the first one was, I think it was for Tony Visconti, I think.
Okay.
Or somebody he was working with, or that was so long ago, man. It was about 95, 96.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of that, and I call those knuckle busters because I have a special winder that's got a faceplate on it, like this big, and you mount this 16-inch thing, and it's going whop, whop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would bust your knuckles, all right. If you get going too fast, it'll break the tape and it'll throw that thing across the room. So
So you start making, let's just say, these P90s and Fender type pickups. So how are you deciding like what gauge of wire to use and how many winds and things like that? What's, are you just experimenting with doing things different ways? How, and then,
yeah, yes and yes, but I also did a lot of repairs. I'd get people sending me old, 54 Strat, 52 Tellys to rewind them. I used to do a lot of that, and many different kinds of designs like Hofner's and those Barney Kessel, the big Kleenex tissue ones. Um, and I've actually sat down and counted turns before.
so you unwound the pickup.
Yeah,
So
sure. Yeah, unwind it, and you also have to have a caliper that will go down low enough that you can figure out what the gauge wire is, which is really a little bit difficult to do because if you press too hard, you're squishing the wire.
right.
And sometimes there's like a coating on the wire that sometimes they'll like lacquer powder them or there's wax coating on it, and that throws your measurement off too. So you try to figure out what the wire is, and you try to figure out how many ohms if you have a working one, and then you try to match that, and you count the ohms, and you count the turns, and then you measure the ohms, and you go, okay, it looks like, because every time you do it, it's going to vary a little bit. If you're going by turns, and then you look at the ohms, it's going to vary a little bit, and like we was talking about, that the just the heat from the tensioning on the wire is going to throw it off. So it takes a lot of trial and error to really come down with, oh, I think they were using 8,000 turns.
Okay.
Usually it makes sense. The turn count will be 8,000 or 8,250, but never something like 8,333, something randomly odd or something, unless they weren't counting the turns at all. So.
Right. So you're learning a lot from doing repairs and rewinds
Yeah.
and from experimentation. You're doing both to figure out kind of what you like and what other people like.
Yeah, and listening to people, what are they requesting that they want, and after you talk to 200 people buying strap pickups, you can kind of figure out this guy wants something really spanky, and this guy wants something with a little more mid-range, and somebody wants something smoother, somebody wants something brighter, more presence, less presence, and so I started making models that followed what people were asking me to do. And that's what most of the stuff that I've come up with, somebody's wanted it. Like the blade Charlie Christians we make, we kept getting requests for that over and over and over and over. And for a pickup that you have to route your guitar to put it in, we've sold thousands of those. I never thought that it would be that popular. And even Fenders and Maton has bought those and routed their guitars especially for them. So
Yeah, it's crazy. I guess that it all goes back to Gatton and
yep, exactly.
doing that.
John Lennon was another one that used that in a Les Paul special, I think it was.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, put Charlie Christian, because the thing, there's so much to the pickup, and yeah, you're right. So much has to be routed out. It's amazing that so many of those, that you've sold that many, but it just shows that I guess you have to follow the market as long as it's what you're wanting to do also.
Yeah, and if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, there's been very few products that I've come out with that we stopped making.
Yeah.
Haven't been lucky that way. So
Yeah, you have a really wide variety of offerings, and you have a big staff of of winders and and support staff and
yeah,
such.
oh yeah,
Yeah. So I'm guessing you have different winders that excel at doing certain pickups and things like that.
Exactly. We train them. It takes about 6 months to a year to get them really proficient in it. And it's not something you can advertise and just get somebody off the street that already knows how to wind pickups.
Right.
So we do. Some guys make a certain section of the product line, and others make other stuff, and we try to cross train them. So because we got to take vacations once in a while.
Right, and you can't stop making, especially like humbuckers, tellies, and strap pickups.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much stuff we make. I never would have imagined it.
Yeah. So let's take something, a simpler design like a Telecaster, bridge pickup. And so how do you decide, this is kind of my product lineup. This is how many different models of Telecaster pickups. I mean, I'm guessing this goes back to custom orders and people keep requesting a couple different things. And so, is that, yeah.
Everybody wants a 52. Not everybody, but a
Yeah.
lot of people want a 52. It's a kind of iconic kind of Telecaster. For a while they used Alnico 3, so we wound up making an Alnico 3, which
Yeah.
is very, very clear pickup. And a lot of guys just. I remember the first time I played it was a Blackguard Telly, and I was like 19 years old, and this friend of mine had bought one, and I was playing a Les Paul at the time, and she hands me this Blackguard. I was like, wow, this thing's got big fat sound out of that bridge pickup. It may have even been a broadcaster. I don't remember. It's too long ago, and I didn't know at the time. But so we make something that reminds me of what my first experience with playing a telly like that, which is a special. And then we have something called the J Street, which is made to work better with the Telecaster Custom with the wide range in the neck.
Right.
Pickup in everybody that I've ever talked to complains that the neck pickup stomps all over the bridge pickup.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we made something that matches much better with a humbucker in the neck, and that's the J Street.
Now, is that one tapped? Does that have taps?
No, we have made tapped ones, but
okay.
It's hardly. I don't know. It's not my favorite thing to. Yeah, it just doesn't. It's hard to get enough of a big difference in the sound. You really gotta.
Yeah. Be
disproportionate in the lines, and the other problem with it is that if one of the coils goes bad, you have to redo both of them. So there's a certain amount of fall down. Fall down is where you're making something, you're trying to get consistent, and something is either out of the range of inductance and ohms that it should be. So we'll make like 30 pickups at a time. So it makes it easier to see if any of them are out of spec, because they'll stick out like big. So I'm not sure where I was going with that, but
yeah. I think I saw I must have seen like a custom J Street or something like that somebody had a J Street that was tapped on a telly.
Them before. It's been quite a while.
You were kind of going through like your telly bridge offerings, and you covered like the 52 style and the J Street and
the special sort of reminds me of that Blackguard and Alnico 3. There was a time about probably 10 years ago where everybody was Alnico 3, like on the Telecaster forum.
Yeah.
And the only time I've rewound lots of Fender stuff, and in 1954, I saw a lot of pickups that had super weak magnets, which had to have been Alnico 3. And that's really the only year that I've consistently found that magnet being used in old Fender pickups.
Yeah.
I haven't seen thousands of old Fender pickups, but I've seen hundreds of them. So we were working with this guy, Jonathan Wilson. He was in
Yeah.
Vintage Guitar Player a while back.
Yeah. And he did the Greenwich Village guitars. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he wanted Alnico 3, so I developed him one for his guitars that has a little bit more whining than typical on it. So it's got a little bit more low mids, but it's got all that clear high end. And he wound up, I don't think he makes guitars anymore, but he was playing with Roger Waters like last year or something.
Yeah. I don't know if he's, I don't know if he's still building. Sometimes he's built off and on, but I think he's been more into being the artist and sideman thing, playing.
It's kind of a better gig. Building guitars is hard, man.
Yeah. Talk about that. Yeah.
Oh, one day I carved 3 maple necks by hand, and I went, oh man, my shoulder is hurting so bad. I can't carve that much. And this one I was like in my 40s, and I made a bunch of arch tops, carved plates, top and inside, made a bunch of those. And man, I was crazy I was crazy to be able to push myself that hard and make stuff that fast. I don't know how I did it. I couldn't do it today, but it's really hard to make money doing it by hand. Everybody's doing CNC, and everybody's switched to Strats and Tellys, and not as many people make set necks. There's a lot of people that just do bolt-on stuff and with CNC, and there isn't that much handwork to do with it. Dot inlays instead of whatever. I used to love doing inlay, but you know what? I found my niche, making pickups, and if people wanted me to do that, I'm happy that somebody wanted me to do something.
Yeah. So you didn't lament the shift from guitar building to pickup, winder.
No, because I was working for myself, and I've worked for some really crappy people before. I worked for some good ones, but some of them were just, oh God.
It's interesting how I've heard a lot of builders. I've heard of repairmen going into guitar building and loving it. I've heard of guitar builders going into repairing or making pickups and other things. And, because you find that, you like this part of the business, and you like doing this, and you really don't like doing that. And,
I like building guitars, but that's not really what people want me to do. I've built a lot of guitars, but, people don't want me there every day building guitars. They want the pickups, and I'm happy with that. So,
yeah. So what do you wish people knew about pickups? What is one of the biggest, the confusion with pickups, and what you wish that the consumer knew about pickups?
Okay, my peeve is this, where somebody they feel like they have to come up with a story about sprinkling angel dust on it, or it's this marketing thing about there's some magical miracle to it or something. It's just it's experience and testing and trying. If you don't know how to test things in a scientific way, you can fool yourself into making the wrong conclusions very easily by, for one thing, we'll actually use different guitars made out of the same wood, which doesn't necessarily mean they're going to sound the same, but we'll match all the pots in both guitars with an ohm meter, so that they're the same, they read the same, that the cap in this is matched with the cap, even down to not as much difference, but the amount of wire that you use in the interconnect, how long that is, it's got to be pretty similar. It doesn't have to be exact, but can't be like way off. You can't have like way much longer. But a big thing is matching the potentiometers. And then we'll listen to the guitars and see if we can hear a difference. And then if we think we do, we'll take them out and swap the pickups so that the set that was in that guitar is now in that one, and that one, and that one, and listen to it again and see if the sound follows the pickup or if it stays with the guitar.
Right.
So that's how we develop our pickups. It's just by listening to it, trying different things, different materials, different lines, different wire gauges, different magnets, different size magnets too. And we just sit there and listen to it. And before I had all these other guys, I was just doing that on my own. And now we all listen and try to explain what we're hearing. And sometimes somebody will hear something a little bit different, and they're right, and you go, "Oh yeah, I didn't hear that before." So it's just a lot of stuff. I think a lot of pickups that are just so, like the imported stuff. I don't think they really listen to it and tweak it. They just build it and sell it.
Yeah, they just throw it out on the market. So it you talked about testing and such. So it sounds like you're testing like the raw materials that you have, and you're trying to have consistency. Is that correct?
Yeah. And you can even like on a metal pickup cover, if it's got too much copper underlayment, they use that they plate it with copper so that they can smooth out any imperfections, because that's easy to, I guess that's why they do it. That's how I understand it. And then they plate over it. It also helps adhere the plating to the metal. And if there's too much copper on it, you take a magnet and you have the pickup on your bench, and you put your magnet beside it and you try to pull away. If it's got too much copper on it, you'll get this eddy current and it'll pull with it. So you can test your pickup covers like that, and that'll be a darker sound if that kind of eddy current. So what were you asking me?
Well, I was asking about what the common misconception that consumers have that you wish you could correct.
Oh yeah. The ohm thing, that ohms are not what you need to be paying attention to. It's actually we go more. The ohms can vary, but the inductance of the coil it's a special measurement that tells you, it gives you a better idea about frequency response and how much output that you have. But inductance, nobody would know if you told them, well, it's got a 3.8 inductance. They wouldn't know what you're talking about. So the biggest misconception is we'll send a strap pickup that we made in our 72-degree shop down to Phoenix, and it'll be 110 down there, and it's been sitting in a UPS truck, and they bring it into the house and they measure it and they go, this pickup's way too high in ohms. That's not what I ordered.
Yeah.
So you just let go of that stuff, because it doesn't mean anything at all. And I've had people call me up and they claim they were electrical engineers, saying temperature doesn't affect the resistance of a metal. Yeah, it does. That's how thermostats work.
Yeah, I learned about that a number of years ago. It just shocked me when you could take the same pickup and you could have it, get it right out of your hot trunk and measure it, and then you could measure it, and 2 hours later when it's been in the air conditioning, and all of a sudden it was getting a
way different.
Yeah.
We have a blog, or we used to, and what we did was we took pickups and we put them in the freezer, and we took pictures of them after we pulled them out of the freezer and before we put them in, and it was a tremendous difference in ohms. So.
What of your pickups are you most proud of, or some of your favorites?
There's one that we make once in a while. It was for the Gibson ES300, I believe, the one with the big angled
Yes.
pickup. It's made out of tortoiseshell. We made a number of those, and they're pretty hard to make. And that's kind of a fun thing to do. Is they angled the pickup. The pole pieces are about an inch apart from each other, and they angled the pickup so that the pole pieces would all of a sudden become closer to each other. So they lined up with the strings, and it also gave it more of a real fat top end and a brighter top end, brighter low end,
Yeah.
something like that, or the other way around. But just getting that tortoise shell is hard to get anymore because it's so flammable,
Yeah.
And then polishing it all out, and we put behind it, we put like a gold foil behind it, so it really reflects the light through it bounces off the gold foil and comes through the lighter parts of the tortoiseshell. It just looks amazing.
That's
And
a
then,
labor of love.
yeah, then you got to wrap the edge of it with like 30-second and get that all glued on and tight. Yeah. So that one, and actually the a couple others, the wide range. We were the
Yeah.
first ones to have all those parts made,
Yes.
covers made, the base plates made, and we had an arrangement with this company that they made the stamps, because making a stamp or a die, it's a multi-process die. They can't just stamp it all at once. They have to do a little bit at a time. It's in the tens of thousands of dollars to do that. And we didn't have money to do that, so we worked with this company, and they let us use it for a year. I gave them all the drawings and stuff, and they did it. And then they were allowed to sell them to other sources, other people. So we did that with the wide range, and we did that with the gold foil.
Yeah.
And some of the parts, we only have some of the parts made by that company. The others, we have our own bobbins made. We can afford injection molds. Those are only like $6,000-7,000, and we have the magnets cut to size and made for us, and we even had there's a pattern on the gold foil that's pressed in. First, I made a punch on the laser cutter. I made it so the laser would engrave this piece of acrylic, two pieces, and it was kind of a grid pattern. And then we have the foot press. We have this big industrial foot press, and we would put the gold foil material in between those two pieces of engraved acrylic and stomp on it, and it worked. Then we start. I was like, I didn't really know. I didn't really think that might not work. Never done that before. But now we have somebody do that too. So, so those two are kind of a big deal. Having
Yeah.
those parts made.
Because those, of course, those pickups weren't really highly acclaimed until, well, I mean, I guess it's in the last 20 years that
Yeah.
both of those pickup designs started to be more and more appreciated,
Yeah.
the wide range and of course the gold foil. I guess a lot of the gold foil goes back to Ry Cooter, who you also make like a cooter caster,
Yes.
string through, steel guitar, Wahoo bridge. I mean,
Yeah.
pickup. Yeah.
I mean, I custom made one by hand, an 8-string one for Freddie Roulette when he lost his 8-string national
Wow.
fire. His house caught on fire, and first thing he did was he took his national out and put it on lawn. Somebody came along and took it. So
Oh,
he made him a brand new copy of it. And there's a story, I don't really remember exactly how it went on, but Jackson Brown was working with Bill Asher, I think, on making gold foils. And at the same time, I was thinking the same thing, because I had James Williamson had been talking to me about the Stooges guy, and Andy Marshall at THG had been talking to me about gold foils. And somehow I found out they were doing it, and they found out I was doing it. And I just wound up doing it because that's what we do. Bill knows how to make pickups too, but he's mostly a guitar maker and a pickup maker on the side.
Yeah.
I think that's how it came about. It was kind of a funny coincidence thing. And there's other people like Lindy Fralin. We've had molds made and split the costs, and both thinking about making the same pickup at the same time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Sharing the cost of having something machined up, whether it's injection bobbins or some type of tooling or something. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good. There's a lot of good people that work in the music industry. So,
yeah. How long have you known Lindy Fralin?
oh god, probably 15 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to Berlin. He went at the same time one time for a show, and we went all around the city. We took a boat ride around, Berlin. I love Berlin. It's great. And then he went off to Prague, I think. Went to Poland and a couple other places. So I don't talk to him a lot, but I know him fairly well. So
Yeah. So, what are your, I guess there's all sorts of things about potting and magnet size and different types of magnets. How do you feel about, like wax potting, as far as like both humbuckers and single coils?
I used to not pot anything at all. Problem with doing that is the coils will eventually shift or settle, and they can become microphonic. For instance, if a really extreme example of this is right after you wind a coil and it's really tight, if you drop it on the floor, it's just going to go, it'll just be a big hairball. It'll be a hairball. So I've had people that have PAFs that all of a sudden became so microphonic they couldn't use them anymore. Just because the guitar got knocked or something. I'm not sure exactly, or just over time. Another thing that can happen is, especially on P90s, it's called bobbin rot. It's like foam rot on a speaker, but the bobbin just degrades and finally breaks, and then the coil gets all loose. And Gibson made a lot of pickups out of tortoise shell. Like the BR9 steel guitar. It's a special P90. It's kind of a racetrack shaped P90. It's made out of tortoise shell, and the clearer parts of the tortoise shell degrade and crumble. And so one benefit of wax potting is your pickup's going to be the same as far as microphonics go 30 years from now or 50 years from now. The trick to it is you want some microphonics. Not so much if you're playing in a band, but if you're just playing solo, you can hear if there's microphonics, and it kind of adds something to it. But once you get drums in there and stuff, it's really hard to hear that stuff. So what we do is we take a heat pad and we put all the stuff on there we're going to pot. And we let it preheat, and then we have a vacuum chamber, and we put the pickup in there, and we'll turn the vacuum on, and we'll let them pot anywhere from 5 seconds to a minute and a half, depending on if it's a Strat or a Tele or a P90 or a humbucker, and how much we want to remove, how much microphonics. So we leave enough in there that when you install a set of Strat pickups, you can, if you use springs, you can, if you mount them so that they're loose and they wobble, you'll get more microphonics.
Right.
If you tighten it down, you'll get less because it's not moving around. And especially like on a Telecaster bridge, if you got it too low, it's going to shriek because they're vibrating. Just even sometimes one turn of the screw, that's all it takes. So we want to leave some microphonics in there. enough that you can deal with it. And it's incredible. I've played a lot of Gibsons, and Gibson up until, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, they didn't wax pot anything. And I never had any problems with microphonics, but then I'd hand the guitar to somebody else and it'd be going, wee, 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 and like, what did you just do? I don't understand it, but
I'm guessing they're not used to controlling a louder instrument, and they're not used to like palm muting and controlling it that way. So
you have to make the tool do what you intend.
right, yeah.
That's it.
What have been some of your biggest aha moments in pickup winding?
Boy, that's tough. Well, the whole thing, it was never an aha, but it was a slow buildup of stuff like matching the pots and the guitars that you're going to be testing pickups in. Well, here's one. We used to use all the winders had these electromechanical counters on them that are driven with gears inside. It's
Right.
like a speedometer or something. And after you put several million turns on that thing, the gears start to get dusted out, and all of a sudden the resistance of the coils is just going all over the place, and we're going, what's going on?
Yeah.
It took me a while to figure it out, but then I figured out, some of the gears are stripping out and it's miscounting everything, and it's a completely random thing.
It's not accurate anymore.
No, and that is not what you want. You don't want miscounting stuff. So that was kind of a big, we need to switch over to digital counters.
Yeah. What about magnets? Because of course, magnets are mainly coming from China at this point. As you've had to switch from, where magnets tended to be coming from, have you had to, kind of change your recipes and such?
Yeah, we had to do, by the time we were buying, once we found out where to actually buy the magnets from, like I think it was Adams Magnetics was one of them. They were selling us surplus stuff from old runs of Gibson parts or whatever, and by the
Yeah.
time that ran out, that was probably about 2000. We had to switch over, and I wasn't really set into very many designs by then. I was still really putting it together. And one thing is, I wound up working with this one company that makes all of our stuff, and they'll make thousands of pickups, and they'll hold them for a year. We give them our projected use, and they'll make that and hold it for a year.
And you meant thousands of magnets, right? Because you said thousands of pickups. You mean thousands of magnets.
Magnets, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the magnet is the pickup.
Yeah.
So they've been really consistent with it. So we're always going from the same place. Whereas stuff like pickup covers, we were buying them from Korea for a while, but they could not deliver us a consistent product. So we had to stop using them. We started having it made in the USA. Most of our parts are made in the USA, except for the magnets.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you gotta watch that stuff, and we measure it. We have Gauss meters and stuff, so we can tell. And one of the things that we check on the inductance is if you put the wrong magnet in it, or it's not charged right, or it's the wrong material, you'll see a difference in the inductance of the pickup itself, the assembly. So that's another quality control issue that we have. So when that inductance either goes above or below a certain amount, then we start investigating. Is it the magnet? Is it something about the coil? Is it the blade or the steel that's in it? We have our screws made for us, our specific kind of metal. Yeah, so we did. We wound up designing a lot of our stuff using the Chinese magnets. So
Yeah. So let's say a guitarist calls up and they say, I want to get new pickups for my Strat or my Telly or whatever. And, do y'all spend much time walking people through, asking them questions or finding what they want or,
yeah, we do that a lot, and I've been doing it since day one a lot. And a lot of times it's figuring out what are they actually asking for,
right.
and getting a common idea going on, because they can kind of trail you off some other direction, and that's not really where they want to go. They don't know how to tell you exactly what they want half the time.
Right.
Or the other thing they do is they think they know what they want, and they want to tell you how to make it. And then if you go ahead and make it that way, then they get it, they go, that's not what I wanted.
Right.
They let us do that part. You just tell me, do you want more of this or less of that, or what is it you're after? And sometimes they'll be using words that just don't make sense. They're contradicting themselves. I want it loose but tight, or something like that. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
You have to spend time figuring out exactly what are they talking about, and it's a lot easier to for them to describe what they have now, describe what you have now, and what is it that you don't like about it, and what you want different, and then we can
Right.
kind of exaggerate that a little bit and go, okay, if you go with this model that we have, that's going to be a good chance of what you want.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
matching people up with what they're, yeah.
Because getting them to actually, instead of them saying, I want to sound like Steve Cropper on Green Onions or the Allman Brothers or what have you, or Richie Blackmore, it's getting them to say, I want more bass, or I want more mids. I want it to be cleaner. I want it to have more mid range or what have you. That's
But
more helpful.
the big thing is, you hand a guitar to one guy and he plays it and it sounds one way, and he hands it to another guy, it's going to sound completely different, and you have
Yes.
no idea how much that guy lays into the attack or doesn't, or he plays smoother, and that's going to make a huge difference in the final result. So that's kind of the thing that can the wrench in the system.
Yeah. Well, Jason, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and tell us some of your story and tell us, kind of give us some of the basics of windings and your business. I guess let, let me follow up with one more question. How difficult has it been to go from just yourself to having a staff like you do and having to keep that consistency? How difficult, because that's what a lot of businesses deal with. How do I grow the business and keep the consistency?
Yeah, it's fortunately, I didn't go from one person to 25 or whatever we have in a month.
Yeah.
It took years of that. First I had two, then I had four, then I had six, then I had eight. So it kind of had time to figure out the system. And then one of the big things for everybody is keeping your supply line. That's a huge deal for even the guys that are single guy shops. If you're buying from something like All Parts or some distributor like that, they never know. They'll have 10,000 units in, and then they'll get a guy come in and buy almost all of them, and then there's nothing left, and they won't have any more for 6 months. And so even when you are buying directly from the manufacturer like we do, they get runs hit on them, and so we have to keep all this inventory on hand to make sure we don't never run out. And the more people we have working, the more inventory we have to have. But the training, we don't we want we don't want to lose guys. We want them to be here for many years because the training, it takes so much time to do, you know. And fortunately, we've been fortunate to pick people that really want to be here and they really work hard. And we've gotten better at figuring out who those people are when we hire them. And we also get a lot of referrals from the guys that work for us. They're friends, you know. So
Yeah.
a lot of people like that too. So
Yeah.
it would be it really could be frustrating if you don't have the right people. That would be really hard because I know one guy that's having that happening to him, and yeah, that'll really hold you down. It's the other people that work for you that build the whole thing up too. You know, it's a good deal. So.
Well, thank you so much, Jason. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate your time and your willingness to share all these aspects of both winding and your business. So
Good.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.